Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk and my ranking of the Insidious franchise. That's 4 films. Obviously, I'm going to be looking at these films a bit more when we get to our 31 on the 31st. It is part of this year's 31 on the 31st. But yeah, I've reviewed them all. And when I review a whole franchise, I do like to do a ranking. It's a nice way of capping it off. Here we go. 4 movies. We'll start from my least favourite, work my way to my favourite, and yeah, let's get into it. At number 4, I'm going to go with the rather controversial choice of Insidious Chapter 2. Given the amount of praise that James Wan gets as a director, I like him as a director. I think he's certainly a very solid director. But I do feel like he's a little bit overhyped, if I'm being perfectly honest. I think he does a lot of visual tricks, a lot of flashy, fancy visuals that sometimes to me are a bit more distracting. And I think that they hide the fact that maybe he's not quite as good of a storyteller as people like to think he is. Now, I think Insidious Chapter 2 is... It's just not that solid to me, to be honest. A lot of people think some people think this is the best one in the franchise. To that I say, what crack are you smoking? Because the film it breaks apart. So in the sense that you have these 2 threads going on, these two story threads. You've got stuff going on in the house, and then you've got this investigation going off, looking for what's going on behind the stuff in the house. And the 2 don't quite seem to run alongside each other in a particularly satisfying way. One feels more like an afterthought. The other feels like, oh, this is the place where we're going to do all the horror and scare people and stuff. And I feel like also because we're more into this spiritual world that we were introduced to in the first film, it's never quite clear what the rules are there, and it just becomes a bit messy, a bit disjointed. It's a bit trippy. I'll give him that. I think it allows one the chance to mess with some visuals, some creepy ass visuals, but on the whole, again, like I say, it just doesn't feel very cohesive to me, plot wise. And yeah, I feel, again, I've said this before in my reviews, the 2 sidekick characters, I'm not quite as sold on them. There's a fight sequence between those 2 and someone else towards the end of the film, and it doesn't look good at all. It's really badly staged. Again, like I say, James Wan can stage a fight scene. Look what he does in Aquaman, although I would imagine most of that is down to, stunt coordinators, fight choreographers. They come up with the fight scenes and then he decides how to shoot them. Now obviously these are much lower budget movies. They probably didn't have all that stuff, probably didn't have the time or the inclination, the money to employ fight choreographers and stunt trainers and things like that to work out this fight sequence. And then all James Wan would have to do was decide what to do with the camera. So the fight just comes off as lame, really. It feels like something shot by a first year film student. And I just expect better, I guess, from this highly praised director, James Wan, who everyone seems to love at the moment and hail as one of the best directors. I'm just like, really? And he gave us that? Okay. So yeah, the film for me, I wasn't that impressed. There's a few really good scares. It does have a creepy sense of dread throughout, and there's one particular ghost in it that I feel is quite creepy. But on the whole, I can quite easily live without seeing the film again. Number 3 is Insidious: The Last Key. This is the 4th film in the franchise, and yeah, again, it suffers from a lot of the same problems that 2 had, which is that it's a bit messy. We're not quite given the rules that we need in order to understand what can and can't be done within the spiritual realm. It just seems like whatever takes the director's fancy, just run with it and do what you want, and we as the viewer are just asked to buy it. And it's just like, no, but that doesn't make sense because this, and this. So yeah, if you're asking those questions whilst watching the film, you're being taken out of the film. So that's a problem for me. However, I was never bored. I was always entertained. I think there's a good sense of dread in the film. I think there are some few good scares, a few set pieces that are quite effective. And it's maybe not quite as bad as people make out. I think this is generally regarded as the worst of the franchise. As you can tell from this ranking, I disagree. Again, it's not a great film, but I do think that it has a tighter story for the most part. Until the final act, when it kind of bungles it and it goes off the rails a bit, it has a tighter story, a more focused story. That centres around this main character of Leigh Whannell, going back to her childhood, seeing some of her origins and you know, that kind of stuff. I think it allowed it to remain a bit more focused. And number 2 for me is Insidious, the first film, again written by Leigh Whannell, directed by James Wan. So he did this just around the same time as The Conjuring, really. The two films were released quite quick succession to each other. I think as a director, I think he shows a bit more flair in this one than he did in the second one. It almost feels in some way that the second one was done as a favour. I don't know, maybe a favour to his friend Leigh Whannell, or maybe it was a way of getting The Conjuring greenlit or something. I don't know. I don't know what the ins and outs of it are. Maybe he just fancied knocking something out, because that's what the second one kind of feels like to me. Whereas here, the first one feels like a bit more care and attention's gone into it. It feels like he's a bit more invested as a director. Again, he's got them same kind of visual tricks that he uses that are perhaps masking the fact that maybe there's not quite as much going on underneath as people like to think. But for the most part, it's effective. The scares are real. The stuff that is happening to the people most of the time isn't jump scares. It's stuff that is, you know, it's there. It's actually happening to them. It's quite effective. Though some characters do some pretty stupid things. You know, like for me personally, as a dad, if my baby had had an encounter with something that I saw with my very own eyes in their bedroom, whilst in their crib, in their cot, there ain't no way in hell I'm putting them back in that room on their own. I'm sorry, but I'm just not. Why would you do that? That's irresponsible parenting 101 right there. So yeah, things like that, kind of stupid decisions that are just made for the sake of dragging the film out a bit longer and getting a few more scares from a few more scenes later on. But no, for the most part, it's pretty effective. It's well handled. And it sets up this world quite nicely in an unexpected way. Like I say, once Leigh Whannell comes into it and we're introduced to this other realm, this spiritual realm, things get a bit more unexpected, a bit more playful, a bit more kind of, oh right, this is going a different place. I thought this was just a haunted house movie, but it's something else entirely. So that, yeah, it does unfortunately mean that the film feels like all of a sudden the tone has changed. It's gone off in a different direction, which, like I say, can be fun. It's interesting, but it does mean that the shift in tone is a bit disconcerting. Because it comes quite late in the day as well. So for me, at number 1 is Insidious Chapter 3. Now this is when Leigh Whannell finally got his hands on directing the material. So no longer was he just the writer, he got to direct it as well. And I personally think that he shows himself to be, I know I'll take some flack for this, but a better director than James Wan. He allows things to be still. This is the thing. I'm always of that school that if you can scare me by just keeping the camera fixed, keeping it still, keeping it wide, and letting stuff play out on screen that scares me without all the tricks of spinning round, jumping in and out and cutting fast, That to me is more effective. That to me is a more assured style of direction. That to me harkens back to people like Kubrick and Alfred Hitchcock. You know, it's just, yeah. I personally think that Whannell's got a much richer understanding of the horror genre and how to shoot a film within the horror genre than James Wan. Sorry, that's just my opinion. Subjective. You can call me a douche, whatever. But I think he's proven that with his subsequent movies after this. This, of course, being the first film he directed. But I think it is the strongest film of the bunch. I think there's a much more focused storyline as well. So he shifts focus away from the family that he followed in the first two movies, brings a new family in. He uses tropes of the horror genre, but kind of circumvents them a little bit. Again, to find out a bit more on that and what I mean by that, check out my review for the film. But no, I think it's good. It's much more focused. I think when we get into the spirit realm, things don't get quite so messy. There's a certain internal logic that remains intact for the most part, whereas in the others, it becomes very questionable. So for me, there's no doubt about it. This is the best film in the franchise. Most people would disagree. You check out the Letterboxd scores, check out the IMDb scores to see that is the case. But I think this film is underrated. I think a lot of people's love for James Wan it's probably what went into the criticisms of this. But I think people need to check themselves, reevaluate, reconsider, go back, watch this, and just ask yourself, actually, who has done the better job? For me personally, it's Leigh Whannell. If you think I'm smoking crack, if you think I'm talking nonsense, which is probably the case, please let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Let me know your ranking of this franchise. And let me know who you think the best director is. You know, we've had a few films now from Leigh Whannell. Who do you think is better? Who would you rather see a film from? Whannell or Wan? Yeah, let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching this video, and until next time, cracking.